Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We are traveling on the water of Aqaba, and we are crossing over from Taba, which is in Egypt, into Jordan to the port of Aqaba. And this is reported to be the land across which Moosa Alayhis Salam crossed when he was escaping from the tyranny of Firoun. So Moosa Alayhis Salam had taken the Israelites from Egypt, and Allah had inspired him with the Torah, and Allah had inspired him with revelation, and he was the person who spoke to Allah directly. And as we mentioned on Mount Sinai, he received the 10 commandments, and he spent many nights in communication with Allah. Eventually it came to a point where he had to leave Egypt and he had to travel to the promised land, and he found himself leaving Egypt in the area of Mount Sinai and moving close towards the coastal area. He had no idea that the coast was in front of him, but he knew very well that Firoun was just behind him. And Allah talks about this incident in Surah Dukhan, where Allah says, كَمْ تَرَكُوا مِنْ جَنَّاتٍ وَعُيُونٍ وَكُنُوزٍ وَمَقَامٍ كَرِيمٍ وَنَعْمَةٍ كَانُوا فِيهَا فَاكِهِينَ. Allah says that Firoun, see, we took him out of his palaces and out of his gardens and all that he was enjoying, and we took him out of those areas and we moved him to a different area, to the bottom of the ocean, and then we made other people inherit those very lands that he was living in. So Moosa Alayhis Salam came to this particular area towards the point of between Nuweiba and Taba, very close to where we are, and he found himself with the sea in front, and he found the army of Firoun behind. Allah inspired him, فَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى مُوسَى أَنِ اضْرِبْ بِعَصَاكَ الْبَحْرَ فَانْفَلَقَ فَكَانَ كُلُّ فِرْقٍ كَالطَّوْدِ الْعَظِيمِ. And he said, oh Allah, I find myself stranded. The army of Firoun is behind, and the huge ocean is in front of us. And Allah said, take your staff and strike the water. When he struck the water, he found that the water opened up into many avenues of crossing over. So immediately he started to take the tribes of Bani Israel across this very water. And as they were crossing over, Firoun came from behind, and he said, see what the Lord of Moses has made for me to cross. But lo and behold, as soon as Firoun started to cross, Allah made it such that Firoun was drowned. All the water closed upon the roads, and Firoun was drowned. And then Allah says, فَالْيَوْمَ نُنَجِّيكَ بِبَدَنِكَ لِتَكُونَ لِمَنْ خَلْفَكَ آيَةً. Allah says, we saved his body from drowning on that particular day, and we preserved his body. And as we know, the body is preserved in the Museum of Egypt, so that mankind can see his body and take a lesson from what happened to him. Allah made it such that the people of Moosa Alayhis Salam, they also were in doubt whether Allah could help them or not. And when they had approached the water, they told Moosa Alayhis Salam, إِنِّي لَا أَمْلِكُ إِلَّا نَفْسِي وَأَخِي فَافْرُقْ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَ الْقَوْمِ الْفَاسِقِينَ. They said, oh Moosa, you and your brother will need to go and fight Firoun, and we are going to be people who are going to remain just here without moving forward. Moosa Alayhis Salam replied, قَالَ كَلَّا إِنَّ مَعِي رَبِّي سَيَهْدِينَ. That never, Allah will make an arrangement for me to cross over. And indeed, Allah made it possible that Firoun was drowned, and Moosa Alayhis Salam had crossed over into the promised land. We have spent a few days in Egypt, and now we are moving towards the promised land. Initially for a few days in Petra and Jordan, and then eventually we'll be in Palestine by Thursday, inshallah ta'ala. Another lesson to learn is Allah is that great being who took Yusuf Alayhis Salam from the bottom of the well, and he transferred him to the top of the throne of Egypt. And Allah is that very being who took Firoun from the top of the throne, and he transferred him and transported him to the bottom of the ocean. And then also we learn, Allah says, when he drowned, فَمَا بَكَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّمَاءُ وَالْأَرْضُ. There was nobody to even cry for him after he had drowned. he and all those with him were drowned at the bottom of the ocean. Nobody mourned the loss of Firoun. Nobody cried or sympathized with them because they all were drowned at the same time. Allah is that being who can turn any situation from disaster into total success. Nobody has control over any situation. Moosa Alayhis Salam was born in a year where Firoun had taken a decision to slaughter every single child born in that year, because he was told in a dream that a child will be born this year that's going to dethrone you. Allah made it such that Moosa Alayhis Salam grows up in the house of the very enemy. And then because of a crime he committed inadvertently, he left Egypt and he traveled by land towards the area of Midian, where he found his spouse and he found some work to do for some years. Then he had come back all the way to Egypt, and this time he finds himself with the Israelites until Allah used him for the salvation of the Israelites. Allah recalls all these incidents, and he recalls them one by one. And when he recalls the favors on the Bani Israel, the first favor he always recalls, وَإِذْ فَرَقْنَا بِكُمُ الْبَحْرِ فَأَنْجَيْنَاكُمْ وَأَغْرَقْنَا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ وَأَنْتُمْ تَنْظُرُونَ. The first favor upon the Bani Israel is Allah says, I saved you from the tyranny of Firoun. You were slaves working for Firoun, and Moosa was the means of you getting deliverance from slavery, and he was the means of you crossing over the ocean and preventing you from drowning. And in the same incident, he caused everybody to drown in the bottom of this very ocean that we are crossing over. And now on a speedboat, it takes 1 hour to go from Taba all the way to Aqaba, which we can see in the distance. The reality is that Allah knows best how long it took Moosa Alayhis Salam to cross over from Taba to Aqaba. Some people say between 3 and 9 days. But yesterday we experienced Mount Sinai. We tried to climb to the summit of Mount Sinai, and after 2 hours of walking we realized we only got to about 1/3. Now we are on the speedboat and a ferry, and we are crossing over to Aqaba, which was close to the promised land. Imagine what powers and what qudrat Allah has to allow a huge following of the Israelites to cross over all the way into the promised land. Then Allah talks about all the other incidents. Allah says, we also gave them other benefits. One of them is that we forgave them for worshipping the calf. And then we also forgave them for other shortcomings of theirs, such that they all were forgiven. There was a point in time where they asked Moosa Alayhis Salam that they wanted to see Allah directly. Allah says, what they say is so blasphemous, I will cause their instant death. After that, when Moosa pleaded for them, Allah gave them life again, and they were again back to life. Then Allah says, we gave Moosa Alayhis Salam the ability to witness the countenance of Allah. Then Allah says, we gave him the ability for the cloud cover to follow the group wherever they went. So after they had crossed this very water and they went to the opposite side, they came to a point where the heat was very intense. Moosa Alayhis Salam asked Allah for help. Allah brought a cloud cover for the Bani Israel, and they could easily go wherever they wanted to, having cloud cover all the time. Allah says, وَظَلَّلْنَا عَلَيْكُمُ الْغَمَامِ وَأَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَنَّ وَالسَّلْوَى. And He gave them food from heaven. Some people say they were like flakes of bread falling from the sky, and there was quail that they could eat and consume that was nutritious and beneficial for them to eat. And then Allah says, we even made it easier for them. They wanted water, and yesterday we went to one of the wells of Moosa. Tomorrow inshallah we're visiting the other well of Moosa, where the staff that he used was able to be struck onto a rock, and Allah took out fresh water for the Bani Israel. So the Bani Israel got saved from the ocean. Then they also got saved from the cloud, from the heat, and they had cloud cover continuously. Then they had food from heaven. Then they had fresh water according to their needs. And then Allah says, I also granted them forgiveness. They could walk into a particular into a particular door when they're entering into the complex of Aqsa. And Allah says, we granted them forgiveness. And inshallah on Thursday we'll enter into this very door. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا ادْخُلُوا هَذِهِ الْقَرْيَةَ فَكُلُوا مِنْهَا حَيْثُ شِئْتُمْ رَغَدًا وَادْخُلُوا الْبَابَ سُجَّدًا. Allah says, this particular door is known as the door of forgiveness. Everybody who enters this door should do so in humility. And when he comes out on the other side, he will be forgiven. Now the Bani Israel were favored by Allah in every way possible. These are all the bounties Allah talks about that He gave them. And as we said earlier, the first bounty He starts off, I saved you from the tyranny of Firoun, and I saved you from drowning in this very water, and I took you to the promised land. And as we cross the promised land, the first encounter will be the grave of Moosa Alayhis Salam, because he intended to cross into the promised land the next day, and Allah took his soul the day before. And he said that Moosa Alayhis Salam, he had, as we said, a serious temper, and when the angel of death came to him, he gave the angel of death a right uppercut, and he disfigured the angel of death's right eye. So the angel of death went to Allah to ask him, what should I do with your slave Moosa? This is what he has done to me. And the angel of death was told that go to him and tell him he should put his hand on one of the sheep, as many hairs under his hand, that's many lives he can still get. Moosa Alayhis Salam chose not to see the promised land, and he chose to basically pass away right there, close to the border of the promised land. Allah make it easy for us to appreciate and understand where we have come. It's taking us a whole hour to cross over from Taba into Aqaba. Moosa Alayhis Salam did so, some narrations say 3 days, others say 9 days to get over to the opposite side. Now we know the Bani Israel, they were always ungrateful. Even though having witnessed the single greatest miracle in the history of time, there were people that were unhappy. One man lost his goblet, and he was unhappy having crossed over and seen himself escaping from Firoun, because his goblet for drinking water was missing. Allah asked the goblet to come out from the ocean and to basically come back into the hand of the man. But that is the ingratitude of man. Today also Allah has given us many bounties. We should appreciate the bounties that Allah has given us. The biggest bounty we're seeing on this mission and the safar is that He's allowing us to travel on the land and travel in the water and also travel in the air. These are all the modes of transport. These huge vehicles have become subservient to us in the sense that Allah is protecting us and making us immune from drowning in the water or falling from a height, and from the earth from swallowing us up. Our deeds and our misdeeds are so many that we don't deserve to have all these huge instruments of transport subservient to us. In fact, the earth cries out, and the sea cries out, and the sky cries out that man is only sinning on earth, and Allah should do something about it. And Allah is still making all these instruments subservient to us to enjoy, to cross over a beautiful water. And we think of the moment that Moosa crossed over with all the people of Bani Israel across the very Gulf. This Gulf of Aqaba leads into the Red Sea, and on the other side is the Suez Gulf, which also leads into the Red Sea. Allah is making it possible for us to see the water that drowned Firoun, and the same water became a crossing path for Moosa Alayhis Salam and his people. The power of drowning is in the water, and the power of drowning can be taken away from the water if Allah wills. The power of burning was in the fire, but for Ibrahim Alayhis Salam, Allah took away the power of burning. The power of the knife cutting was in the knife, but when it came to Ismail Alayhis Salam, Allah took away the power of cutting. Allah took away the power of burning, and Allah took away the quality of drowning. The earth became flat, the roads became spacious. 12 tribes of Bani Israel crossed over in this very land to the opposite side that we are quickly approaching. And if you look back, Egypt is now behind us, and right in front of us is the land of Sham. Today Jordan, and tomorrow inshallah or the next day into Palestine. Allah make it easy for us to enjoy the safar and to reflect on all the bounties of Allah that Allah bestowed upon the people of the past and that Allah is bestowing upon us today, right now. This is not an ordinary journey. A person who reads a particular dua, and the dua is Bismillahi majreha wa mursaha, Inna Rabbi laghafurur rahim. That is a dua that Allah asks you to read in the Quran that Nuh alayhi salam read, and he was granted immunity from drowning. So Nuh alayhi salam was that Nabi where Allah sent water from the bottom and he sent water from the top, and water came from every direction up to the point when even members of his family were drowned because of their sins. Here we are moving on a beautiful calm ocean, as clean as a whistle, and you can see down, and sometimes you can actually see the fish swimming in this beautiful calm water. And quickly we see Egypt receding in the distance and Palestine approaching us very, very quickly. And the most striking difference that you will be able to see is the mountains of Palestine become red, and if they are not red, they are white in color. And this is a stark difference to the mountains we experience on the Egyptian side, especially in the Mount Sinai Peninsula. Quickly we are approaching the area of Aqaba. So between Taba and Nuweiba is where Moosa Alayhis Salam left, and when he reached on the opposite side, he reached close to the area we are going to port in a few minutes. That is the area called Aqaba. And from there he moved onwards towards Palestine, which is very close to where we are right now. And eventually he settled down. He settled down close to Palestine, and before he entered Palestine, Allah took his soul and he passed away into the mercy of Allah. And then, inshallah, the next stop after the port will be, one of the graves would be Yusha bin Nun, who happened to be a servant of Moosa Alayhis Salam. In one of his journeys was Khidr. But we will find that Yusha bin Nun is that person who took over from Moosa Alayhis Salam when he passed away. So this is a journey in the sense of recounting and reliving our history and taking the same lessons that were offered to the people of the past. Allah gave them every bounty we can think of, and we too, back home where we are, Allah has given us every bounty. The biggest bounty He's given us in this trip is free time, and we are able to basically relax, unwind, and enjoy the scenery and the beautiful sea and the beautiful mountains meeting together in unison, as well as the sky. And Allah is making it easy for us to approach into the land of Sham by sea. There are very few prophets that approached the land of Sham by sea. One of them was Moosa Alayhis Salam. The other was Sulaiman and Dawood Alayhis Salam. And the other prophets were Isa and Yahya Alayhis Salam. But not from this particular sea. Their sea was the Sea of Galilee, which is very close in Palestine. But they also had some epic journeys on the water, and Allah also allowed them to show some of the miracles on the water, especially Isa alayhi salam. He could basically walk on the water and basically perform the act of baptism, which started off with Zakaria and Yahya alayhi salam. This is not a practice of the Muslims of today, but we need to appreciate what those prophets had gone through and what their deen was all about. But there were miracles that they also performed in the middle of the water. Allah gave us the understanding to appreciate and enjoy these few moments. This is not a small moment crossing over this water. We would never have the power to cross over this water. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they had made such an effort that Allah had given them the ability to cross over the water. Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu had an army of 70,000 men, and they had to cross a particular river to get to the enemy. At that point in time, the enemy saw them, and Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas looked at the crowd and he said, there's a particular sunnah that we are all not practicing on. Because of that, we will never be able to get to the enemy across this water. When they looked carefully, they found it was a sunnah of miswak. Everybody took the sunnah of miswak seriously For 24 hours, everybody used the miswak. The next day, Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas took 50,000 men and they crossed over the water without even the hooves of the horses getting wet. The enemy saw them moving, and the enemy made a decision that these people are coming across, walking on the water and sharpening the teeth. We should not fight these people. We should give them up as quickly as we can, inshallah. Allah accept us, make it easy for us to travel again.
Ameen.
And to be part of this wonderful journey and this beautiful group. Jazakumullahu khair.